Welcome back to the show, everybody. The question today is, will XRP holders become American royalty? Well, I think so, and we're going to get into that today. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow me on Twitter at BackupBradleyAbove, and everything that we're talking about here today, January 18th, 2022. We are at under $2 trillion at $1.976 trillion for the crypto cap, and that is off by 1.59% right now. The numbers are 41,000 plus for Bitcoin, Ethereum 3,100, and we see Cardano is at $1.45, Solana is 137 and change, 74 cents for XRP right now. Let's take a look at the range of price, 0.7392, 0.7700. I want all of you to know that this conversation we're about to have today is about XRP holders becoming American royalty. That's right, like the Vanderbilts or the Rockefellers. I've talked about it before, and it's 74 cents and under an SEC lawsuit. I absolutely believe we are on the path for that to happen. Not financial advice, but you're about to see my digital perspectives. Let's get started. This is Miguel Villas, shout out to you, my friend, the former head of XRP Global Markets. And he is going to tell you that the goal, as well as it was for Chris Larsen, and I'm sure it still is, while their time at Ripple, is to see XRP become as liquid as a G10 currency. Take a listen to this exchange from August 7th, 2020 to get us going here. Yeah. And now, during your time at Ripple, there was a moment there, and I know Chris Larsen had even made a reference to, you had talked about speaking about XRP having at some point the same liquidity of a G10 currency. Chris Larsen had spoke about the XRP having the same liquidity as like a Swiss franc. Could you speak to that a bit?
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. The goal is to make this a global currency, right? And to make it a substitute settlement asset, so that you want to settle in dollars, great. You want to settle in euro, great. You want to settle in yuan, great. You want to settle in XRP, fantastic. You can do that.
There you have it. That is the former head of XRP Global Markets telling you that is the goal. Chris Larsen has told us the same exact thing. But where are we at today? We're at 74 cents, and we're underneath of an SEC lawsuit that has gone on for more than a year now. And in fact, to bring it home, let's take a look at exactly just how long it has gone on. 393 days and counting. American crypto innovation under siege, SEC versus Ripple. And I think it's only now that the rest of the crypto space is really starting to find out that this case represents more than just Ripple and XRP, but the entire crypto space. And this is where we're at today. Now, as we move forward, some things you've seen and some you may have not. And remember, there's hundreds of people joining the channel every day. So this information I specifically want to go over, not just for them, but also because the price is what the price is today, 74 cents. And I'm not wavering one bit. And I'm not selling any used cars, so it's okay if you sell and get out. But this is Evan Schwartz right here, and he's going to tell you about the ILP, the Interledger protocol. And why is this important? Let's let Evan tell you. From Ripple.
Heard me say this before, but I'll throw it out to the audience. What is Interledger's total addressable market size? All the money.
There you have it. And it is all the money. And what is important about the Interledger protocol? Well, it is important about the Interledger protocol because of this. It was, in fact, gifted from Ripple. The Interledger protocol was gifted to the W3C. This is almost exactly the same as IP for the internet protocol, but it's Interledger protocol, but for money and value. The ILP are a set of protocols that make sure a payment and settlement can bounce from one network to another or through multiple networks to reach a final destination. Ripple made this protocol and gifted it to the W3C. So if trust the internet is time that you start to trust the W3C, the XRP ledger, and the ILP. Now, with that being said, just really quickly here, the W3C is the World Wide Web Consortium and is the main international standards organization for the World Wide Web, period. That's why that's important. Now let's take a look at some of this, right? Because I want to show you this here. Let's start with this. So what we're talking about is the addition to the protocols that are making up the internet experience that we're having right now, like website protocol or the IP protocol, right? The ILP protocol and the XRP ledger can be brought into all of these other protocols, like the email protocol or the file transfer protocol. The XRP ledger, and in conjunction with the ILP and other protocols, can be brought into this experience of the internet to move and settle value. That is what we're talking about. This is the path that we are on. But again, we have to come back to the case. If you're going to move all the money, as Evan Schwartz says, and if you're going to achieve the goal, that's the goal, to be as liquid as a G10 currency, as Miguel Villas and Chris Larson have said, you're going to need to have legal precedent on what this protocol is and what this token is. And because this technology is so new, we do not have that as of yet. So we have to ask ourselves, what's the process? How do we get there just by this case alone? I don't know that this case alone is how we get there. What do I mean? I mean entertaining the understanding and possibility that we could see a settlement, as we all want, with clarity that allows us to move forward. That would be phenomenal. Or we could get a judgment. Now, a judgment in the case with clarity would be phenomenal too. And as much as I'd like to see a settlement with clarity, a judgment with clarity may be the better path for long-term adoption, because if you have a judgment with clarity from this court, more than likely, I would expect if that judgment with clarity fares in our favor, Ripple's favor, that the SEC would probably appeal that decision. And then it would go to a higher court, ultimately to a path to the Supreme Court. I wouldn't mind if we have that kind of clarity, but I don't want to be hindered to where we can't see adoption and full-scale intended use take place while we're waiting for that ultimate goal. I do believe ultimately that may be the path that we go. Now, I could be wrong, and if I am, I'll make the video about it. But ultimately, to have the XRP ledger, the XRP token, really revered and respected and trusted and accountable and all of the rest of it, so it can truly move a value and settle all the money, no matter what it is. I believe at some point it will have to make its way to the highest court of the land, the Supreme Court. Again, as long as we get a judgment with the clarity we need that allows Ripple and XRP to take off and run and prove itself, then does it matter? No. And in fact, it may be the best outcome ultimately, because once it goes to the highest court in the land and gets the ruling it needs and clarity, final judgment, then there is no more case. There is no more liability issue, right? There is no more legal recourse for someone to come back at it, just like the Howey test, the Ripple test. But how do they get there? How do they make an argument for that? Well, let's listen here to this clip here, because this clip here is going to show us that there is more than just a Howey test. I have brought this up before, but stay with me here, because I believe it is a very, very real part of how we get to a place of clarity, whether it be a settlement or a judgment with clarity and then an appeal. Listen, I'm 12 years short of a law degree. I'm no lawyer, and this is not financial advice. But I want to take a look at this clip that Jeff shared with us from the hearing just 2 days ago, congressional hearing with Gary Gensler. And I want you to hear what he says in the exchange with Warren Davidson. Now, keep in mind, we've had to take a look at the scary idea or notion of XRP being a security. We've had to take a look at the idea of it potentially a bond designation for it. Well, lesser termed items are not bonds. They're called notes. And you even have things, promissory notes, right? So just listen to this little quick exchange right here, what Gary Gensler says. It's not what I'm saying. Listen to what he says.
In some collective group of individuals. That's central test. It's called the Howey test. There's other broad brushes with regard to this as well, as to when something is a note, called the Reeves test that
Thurgood Marshall ruled on a few decades ago. And that is very important because the Reeves test is about determining when something is a security or a non-security as a promissory note. Now, I want you to think about this before we take a look at these things, okay? Think about what we're talking about here. You own a token that is native to a protocol, a payment protocol that moves value. Think of this for a moment. What do we know about this? Although the term note is specifically included in the statutory definition of a security, case law has determined that not every note is a security. The Exchange Act and SEC specifically exclude notes with a term less than 9 months, the proceeds of which are used for a current transaction from the definition of a security. Moreover, numerous lower courts have carved out exemptions over the years for commercial paper type notes, such as purchase money loans and privately negotiated bank loans. Relying on Howey, many courts developed an analysis based on the risk of the loan. That is, the issue revolved around whether the lender had contributed risk capital subject to the entrepreneurial or managerial efforts of the borrower. Relying on Landreth, other courts decided a note is a security as it appears in the statutory definition. It goes on to say here, and we're going to cover this, we're almost done here, so stay with me here. Now, analyzing and bringing together the line of the lower court opinions, the U.S. Supreme Court, Reeves versus Ernst & Young, adopted the family resemblance test to determine whether a note is a security. Under the family resemblance test, one must start with the presumption that a note is a security. Is that not what is happening here? Aren't they starting with the presumption that this, what they believe is a note, is a security? Didn't Gary Gensler use his own words right here to tell us that it's not just a Howey test, but when something is a note? To start with the presumption that is something is a security as a note first, which is rebutted if the note bears a resemblance to one of the enumerated categories on the judicially developed list of exceptions. If the note does not bear a resemblance to an item on the list, the analysis continues to determine if a new category should be added to the list. The following is a list of notes that have judicially been determined to fall outside the definition of a security. A note delivered in consumer financing, a note secured by a mortgage or home, a short-term note secured by a lien on a small business or some of its assets. Did Ripple not start a lending program? Does number 3 work? I think it does. A note evidencing a character loan to a bank customer, a short-term note secured by an assignment of accounts receivable. Certainly that could apply to their lending program at Ripple as well for XRP to their customers. A note which simply formalizes an open account debit or debt incurred in the ordinary course of business. This also qualifies, I believe, as a note that would be a non-security. Particularly as in the case of the customer of a broker, it is collateralized. And then a note evidencing loans by commercial banks for current operations. Couldn't Ripple get a bank charter and obviously fall inside of this as well? I think number 3 and number 5 absolutely fall under the lending program that Ripple has launched. Helping to qualify the exemption here of the Reeves test. But all of this starts because you must have start with the presumption that the note is in fact a security, then can be rebutted by these points for exclusion, which I believe we can. Now, the interesting thing about all of this is this. What are we talking about here? You know, I started all of this because I believe XRP holders will become American royalty if you have enough of it. And obviously, if you have enough patience and perseverance, not financial advice. I'm here for the ride. And what ride am I talking about? I'm talking about the ride of understanding that American royalty is like the Vanderbilts, who made millions on the railroad industry. They were worth $100 million back in 1887. In 1887, the estate was worth estimated $100 million. Think of it. What that dollar would be worth today, all that amount. Now, with that being said, the reason I picked the Vanderbilts is because they were in the railroad industry. And I don't believe for a second that they were invested in the railroad car. Oh, no. We're invested in the railroad tracks. Because Glenn Hutchins has told us that the value, ladies and gentlemen, is in fact in the protocol. Take a listen.
So if we'd been sitting here together in 2002, we probably were. You would have asked me, the internet. We've just seen this huge meltdown in the last 12 to 15 months. Are you still a believer?
Now think of that. He's giving you the analogy of the internet when it had its crash and .com crash back in the early 2000s. And are you still a believer? And are we not in a similar situation today because of the lack of clarity? Instead of the .com bubble, the baby bubble busting first that ended up birthing the Googles and the Amazons and so on. But are we not in a similar situation, but with regulation and a lack of clarity of what this new technology is? Because it moves money and value. And we need legal precedent on it. But take a listen.
Right? Yep. And so the answer is yes. Now the digital currency solution is the most important technological advance I've seen since the internet. It has the capacity to do lots more, but it certainly has the capacity to enable us to move anything of value around the world at the speed of light at no cost. It has 3 components. It has a token of value, which is called the Bitcoin. It has an accounting mechanism, which is called the blockchain. But the most important piece, which is one that people aren't focusing on, is the protocol. The underlying protocol by which we agree to conduct these transactions.
And what are we talking about with the underlying protocol? I'll tell you what we're talking about, because it isn't the railroad car. We're talking about the railroad tracks. That's the underlying protocol, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're really invested in here. What else are we talking about? I'm going to show you. We're talking about being invested in the next layers of protocol that make up the experience of the internet of value, because we already have the internet of information. That's why I believe for those that are strong enough, for those that have built up enough, and it's not financial advice, it's my digital perspectives. that we will have an opportunity to own a piece of the internet of value. Whether they declare this a note that's non-security or whether they declare this a note that is. They could call it a fishing rod. I don't care what they call it. A skateboard. Just as long as they allow it to operate at its full scale intended use, I don't really care what they call it. But at the end of the day, when I look at this, imagine if HTTP, which is the protocol that allows you to build websites all over the internet, imagine if there was a token that represented the value of the amount of assets and websites and money that move through all of these places. Imagine if there was a token that they built back then, because that's what this is now. Imagine if there was a token to represent the internet protocol, the original TCP/IP, that represented a value and a token that went with that network that represented the amount of information and put a value on that token to represent that particular protocol. Or file transfer protocol and a token that went along with that. That is what we have here with the XRP ledger. We have a token that comes along with it now. That is the difference of what they've done today versus what was done in the birth of the internet and the protocols that were initially laid as the foundation bed for the internet that we have today. And all of these different layers of different applications that are on top of it, the real winners have been the Googles and the Amazons and Apples and so on. But now we're here and we have the ability, and we don't know for how much longer, because this court case could work out in a manner where we don't get to continue to purchase and buy XRP in the same manner that we used to. And we certainly can't get it today the way we used to. Look, I could be wrong, and me and my family could be flat busted. That's a possibility too. But I don't think so. The reason I made this video is because I'm just as confident today at 74 cents and a court case that is undecided and a Congress that has absolutely not brought the kind of clarity and legislation to get the agencies back in their own lane to unleash American innovation. And I'm here until it does and beyond. Not financial advice from me or anyone else. That's where I'm going to leave it today. American royalty. That's the way I see XRP holders. And that's going to do it for me. I'll catch all of you on the next one.